Bitcoiners, hope you're doing well this morning. Let me just make sure my setup is good. Morning, Rickster Swixter. Let me check this audio. Looks like the audio is pretty good, huh? Mornings, greeting, Louis. Now that I've trained you all that I'm not coming at 8 o'clock, we'll see how many people show up until I train everyone that I will be here again. Sorry to be inconsistent. It was indeed not easy traveling. Justin, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Ah, here we go. There's the team. Good news. Greg, good morning. Sun's up. Well, I don't want to ruin it. We'll be doing that. Florida, bye-bye. Indeed, Bitcoin graffiti. There, let's do it, King Masamusa. I won't let it, won't make you wait longer. Indeed, I checked it out this morning. The sun came up exactly as scheduled. Bitcoin running, no problems at all. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. So because we haven't been live in a few days, we have a bit of a backlog of Moscow time to get rid of here. So let's get rid of some of this backlog on Moscow time. So lots of stuff going on in DC, as everyone knows, right? So the New York Times got right into the coverage, and they have a great headline here. Do dress sneakers belong in the Oval Office, they ask. People felt strongly after spotting the hybrid shoe at a meeting with the president. Geez, everyone at the meeting with the president had sneakers on? Oh my God. Guy Trebay writes, think of it as a rare instance of cross-aisle consensus or else a sartorial trend gone badly wrong. But it did not go unnoticed when, in a photograph from the Oval Office posted to President Joe Biden's account this week, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, Senator Mitch McConnell, and Representative Hakeem Jeffries were all captured wearing some variant of the dreaded footwear hybrid, the sneaker shoe. You got sneakers. So apparently Disease X is coming. This is according to the Weekend Post. And with it, the next global pandemic, scientists warn. So be careful of that, guys. There's another pandemic coming, so hopefully you still have some masks left over. Take an old vaccine or whatever, that might help. Right? MSNBC. So I just got back from Florida, and I wouldn't have gone had I read this one. I'm telling you, I'd have stopped going to Florida because it turns out that the NAACP has issued a travel advisory, guys. There's a travel advisory for the state of Florida, according to MSNBC. The NAACP has issued a travel advisory for the state of Florida, claiming the state is openly hostile to African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals under Governor DeSantis's leadership. So I hope all the African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals who came to Bitcoin 2023 didn't die. I hope they didn't. That would be great. Would be bad for the business if everyone died who came, because it sounds dangerous. The Epic Times writes, January 6th coverage. FBI concerned that the January 6th footage would expose undercover agents and informants. So that's why you didn't get to see it. This one's really great, okay? Because this is telling you, this is alpha info for all of you, right? This is a Harvard study, guys. So if you're like Justin and you think you had it all figured out and you're eating good steak and all that, wrong. This is what you need to do. According to Harvard, choosing heart-healthy oils for home cooking, canola, and other seed oils are good choices, despite what some social media posts say. So Justin, stop it. Do better. Remember we were talking about that diplomat in Afghanistan, right? And she was posting some amazing stuff. And of course, the Taliban PR in Afghanistan, right? There's kind of a war going on between the social media accounts. But the Biden diplomat did say this, that she apologized for saying that Afghan women need black girl magic and to learn from Beyonce and Lizzo under Taliban leadership. So she did apologize. She said it was not a great thing. Apparently, Pete Buttigieg, I just went through the travel. Like I made it through the travel advisory, guys. So I made it home. So the NAACP travel advisory, I luckily made it back from Florida, but it was an ass pain. I'm telling you, I arrived at the airport and I came 3 hours early, like an idiot normally, right? But good thing I did come 3 hours early, and I had a feeling, I just was not going to live without seeing my family. So I made sure I got there earlier, and I had an 8 a.m. flight, so I woke up at 4:30 or something, made it to the airport, met with just complete chaos, complete disorganization, awful experience. I think that might be the end for Miami Airport for me. I'd rather go to the Fort Lauderdale one and drive. So all the stuff going wrong in our transportation system, and the Secretary of Transportation luckily got a really good interview with Wired. Normally we could probably fix some of the stuff in the airports with like technology, maybe. That the Singapore airport, for example, every airplane has its own security check. So when you get into the gate and you actually get to your seats and all that, that seat area is closed off like the old smoking sections. And you just put your bags through the thing, and then right when you're at the airport. So you enter the airport like it's a mall, and then you walk around, and then you go to the place where you'd go on the flight, and you go. So there's a lot of good ideas out there, and I wondered if this Wired article with Pete Buttigieg, like I was curious as I was in these lines if I would get any news on making the American airports better. So Wired, a tech magazine, you'd think, So here's what they had to say: Pete Buttigieg loves God, beer, and his electric Mustang. Sure, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation has thoughts on building bridges, but infrastructure occupies just a sliver of his voluminous mind. I didn't find out much more about the transportation issues, but I'm glad to know he has a voluminous mind, right? That's good news. So good for him. All right. Now, as you know, we love the simulation here. We love it, right? And we know that the simulation just adores the most entertaining outcome possible. It seems oriented towards not Occam's razor, but Elon's razor, right? The most entertaining outcome is the most likely. So that it is Bitcoin Pizza Day, right? I am not surprised to find out that Pizzagate is in the news. Bill Gates. Otherwise, from now on, I'm retiring the toll booth nickname. Toll booth Bill Gates, over, right? That was his business model. Toll booth. He would simply go out and find a way to intercede between commercial relationships, monopolize things, and you had to go to him, right? So that was a pretty good nickname. I liked it. But now that Pizzagate, right? You all remember what Pizzagate is? Mike Cernovich was very famous, and he's been derided for it. Who knows about what happened? But Pizzagate was connected to a codified language from the Hillary Clinton campaign that apparently, who knows, said that there was a nasty ring of sexual abusers attached to this pizzeria in some random place. So it turns out that we found out that these, blackmail that might be involved in the Epstein thing that was related to Pizzagate has all happened on Bitcoin Pizza Day, and we see Bill Gates drawn in. So he's no longer a toll booth. His new name is Pizza Bill Gates, right? And we're going to go with Pizza Bill Gates from now on. So Pizzagate and Bill Gates merging into one on Bitcoin Pizza Day. Pretty auspicious, pretty good stuff. So Mario Nawfal breaks all this down for us. So breaking: Jeffrey Epstein appeared to threaten Bill Gates over an affair with a Russian bridge player who looks just like Greta. Right? I wonder if Greta is going to be happy about that. Because we all know we're willing to make energy policy off Greta's happiness. I don't know if she's going to like this very much. We'll see. She might not say anything. According to sources familiar with the matter, Epstein discovered that Gates had an affair with a Russian bridge player, and he seemingly used his knowledge to threaten the Microsoft co-founder. These stunning details add a new layer of complexity to the relationship and offer insight into Epstein's manipulative tactics. It has been revealed that Gates first met the woman identified as Mila Antonova around 2010 when she was in her 20s. Epstein became acquainted with her in 2013 and even financed her attendance at a software coding school. In 2017, Epstein emailed Bill Gates requesting reimbursement for the cost of Antonova's course. This request came after Epstein had failed to convince Gates to participate in a philanthropic fund he was trying to establish with JP Morgan Chase. The implication behind the email was that Epstein could expose the affair if Gates didn't maintain a connection between them. A spokeswoman for Gates clarified that his interactions with Epstein were solely philanthropic purposes, and Epstein's attempts to leverage their past relationship to threaten Gates were unsuccessful. Bill Gates has acknowledged meeting Epstein a few times, but claims that these encounters were solely focused on philanthropy, which he now considers a mistake. Antonova, the Russian bridge player, expressed her disgust with Epstein's actions, stating that she had no knowledge of his criminal activities or ulterior motives when they first met. Epstein would meet with politicians, businessmen, academics, and celebrities, seeking favors and using connections to further his own agenda. When relationships soured, he could turn against such individuals. Gates, with his significant net worth and philanthropic endeavors, was among the prominent names in Epstein's social circle. We now know more about Bill Gates' interest in bridge, a card game he learned from his parents and developed a passion for. Antonova, who played bridge and sought funding for an online bridge tutorial business called Bridge Planet, was introduced to Epstein by Boris Nikolic, a confidant of Gates and a top science advisor at the time. While Epstein didn't invest in Antonova's project, he did pay for her coding school upon her request. In addition to the revelations about Epstein and Gates, we also know about Epstein's attempts to establish a multi-billion-dollar charitable fund with JP Morgan, which would involve contributions from wealthy individuals. Epstein tried to use his connections, including to Gates, to gain support for the fund. However, the fund never materialized, and JP Morgan expressed regret for its association with Epstein. The article concludes by noting that Epstein contacted Gates in 2017, years after the affair with Antonova, and ended seeking reimbursement for coding school expenses. The implication was that Epstein had knowledge of the affair and could expose it. Gates's spokeswoman denies any financial dealings between Gates and Epstein, dismissing the claim. These revelations paint a complex picture of the relationship between. The story underscores the far-reaching consequences of their association and the continuing scrutiny surrounding their actions. What more will be learned about Epstein and his connections to notable figures? Mario Nawfal asks. So that's some pretty tight, nice symmetry by the simulation here on Bitcoin Pizza Day. It looks like we're starting to pull on the Pizzagate thread. Now, who knows what we're going to find, right? As Mario Nawfal expressed. That was all a Mario Nawfal post that I read, by the way. I find Mario is pretty good at those tight little newsy things. So, as we know, we love the simulation. And if any of you saw when I met RFK the other day in Miami, that's exactly what we were talking about. So I posted a couple of pictures speaking with RFK. And I mentioned RFK that right here on the Breakup, we've been saying since last November that he was probably going to win, be the next president. And we were only saying that, or at least run. We were only saying that, of course, because of the simulation. We had no other inside knowledge other than saying if it's true that Elon's razor is such a thing and that the predictable end result of a situation is simply the most entertaining outcome being the most likely, then when we first heard about the JFK, LBJ, CIA situation, when it was on Tucker Carlson and RFK said it was the most brave piece of journalism in X amount of years, we right here in the morning all got together and said, hey, I don't know what to tell you. Add these things up, and what we have is a situation where RFK simply has to come to the forefront and become a major player in the presidential run. And it was on no other information that we were deriving our prediction other than that was the most entertaining outcome. So, of course, back in November, RFK was not even on the radar for anyone to imagine he was president. And our system of going with the most entertaining outcome has produced something that's materializing into a real result. Looks like RFK indeed is a major player after that announcement that he would run. And now it looks like he's got the Bitcoiners in his corner. I was incredibly surprised about the amount of unanimity amongst Bitcoiners when we were down in Miami about embracing his candidacy. And it's sort of what I've been saying from the beginning. You know, a lot of Trump supporters, even, I would say, Trump supporters like myself who love Donald Trump, right? We were huge fans, huge fans. We've mentioned many times the last day of Donald Trump's time in office was a little difficult for us to handle, and we still haven't forgiven him. We understand. No problem, no hard feelings, right? We get it. Threatened, RFK could probably explain why he made the choices he made on the last day. But I don't have 4 years of defending Trump in me. I can't deal with it, right? I was happy to do it for the last 4 years. No, you missed it. Trump, this was a little bit like this. And no, no, no. We'll always love the guy. Always have time for him. Always can't wait to hear what he has to say. Think he's the funniest guy going. But when we stop and look at it and start predicting what it'll mean, Trump is an expensive person personally for individuals who support him. He's an expensive person to support. You lose friends, you lose business opportunities, you lose all kinds of things because he triggers people, right? He's very divisive. And we love how divisive he was for what needed to happen, right? He flipped reality. But I've said from the very beginning, Trump, and I said it from the day he was elected, we didn't need much more than election day, actually. We got a lot out of Trump just from being elected. He broke so many brains. He flipped reality upside down. The mere act of it was one of the most amazing things you'll ever see. And we got a lot more out of the Trump presidency than just day one. So I think of all of that as a plus. But I don't have 4 years of saying, oh, well, Trump is this and he missed it and it was that and da da da. I don't have time for that. The thing with RFK is you get all of the good reality breaking, flip the world upside down on its head, completely change things, restart America, reignite the engine. You get all of that with RFK, and you don't have to deal with the crazy Trump stuff. So that's pretty good. So that makes me think it's awesome, right? And plus, we got a real opportunity here for an entertaining outcome. That was exactly why we said it back in November. In November, we said the most entertaining outcome is a Kennedy re-enters the public space and we get narrative closure on what happened in 1964. So that's exactly what RFK, if you saw some of those pictures, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about, it doesn't go back to 1971. As we often say in Bitcoin, what happened in 1971? That was, of course, the gold standard depeg from Nixon. We've been saying for a long time here, the story of Bitcoin actually goes back to 64 when the Bank Secrecy Act began. When they actually, by the way, also in 64, diluted the coins, right? It went from silver to whatever the crap is these days. And so that whole instance in 1964, the point of KYC and AML, all of that stuff starts in 1964 because protests begin in 1964. The usurper of the presidency, LBJ, is launching a false flag operation in the Gulf of Tonkin at that very moment. We are entering war with Vietnam. We're starting to get a ton of protests, and they want to know why people are protesting. And they start wanting to know who's paying for it. So they understand follow the money. And LBJ must have understood follow the money in 1964 because we started to see tons of legislation enacted to find out why and where people were protesting, where it was coming from, who was funding it, all that stuff. Of course, that's where we see conspiracy theorist as a concept, as a title, as an insult become formalized in the New York Times. It starts to enter public consciousness. Anyone who asked a question about JFK were labeled a conspiracy theorist. And to this day, if you ask this question or Pizzagate, right? If you asked about Bill Pizzagate, about any of this stuff, you were told that you were a conspiracy theorist. Luke Rudkowski, who was with us in Florida, had an awesome t-shirt, right? He says, I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are, I told you so. It's a pretty good shirt, right? Not bad. So what we see now is a pretty interesting take on the possibility, anyway, of the Kennedy story really surfacing over the next few months. All shall be revealed, they said, and it looks like we're starting to get some pretty interesting info on that. So, but that's not it, right? The whole context of flipping our reality and being in very strange times, let's say, right? Also means that the tools of debate right now are so different, right? So I don't know if any of you caught this, but the president's deep fake AI. Have you guys seen this deep fake AI of Joe Biden drinking Bud Light? And his face is superimposed on another body. And it sounds like Dylan Mulvaney. I'm not sure whose body on whom he is imposed, but he's drinking Bud Light, and it's one of the most uncanny valley, eerie things you're ever going to see. And the idea of it is, to me anyway, that flipping of reality, and that we are indeed entering a completely new era. You can tell that this next presidential election, the 2024 presidential election, is going to be lit. It's going to be wild. Just looking at this video, you can tell right now that whatever fake news the media throws at this, they can't compete with Twitter and other platforms simply on entertainment alone, right? And that's part of our frame here, that the most entertaining outcome is the most likely, right? So we can use entertainment potential as a predictive lens. And if you think about it, right, it makes a lot of sense. People want to see and experience the most entertaining stuff. And so individually, we end up making all these decisions to get to that point. And you've already heard. So here's to bring the sort of Pizzagate thing and tie it all up in a bow. Now, remember the QAnon movement, which was a psyop, right? We are not QAnon people here. The QAnon psyop suggested that, and it was born out of Pizzagate, right? The QAnon psyop is born out of Pizzagate. The QAnon psyop suggested that everyone in the American system were involved in this blackmail construct around young people and sex and all of this kind of stuff, and blackmail. So the QAnon folks absolutely believed that as part of their worldview. It was fundamental. And they also believed, right? Weirdly, this was like an annotation to the QAnon system, but it was what they started with. So Pizzagate and the reaction created the QAnon opportunity. QAnon filled with disinformation, misinformation, psyops, crazy people. But one of those psyops was that Trump was going to partner with JFK Jr., who wasn't dead, according to them. And he was going to return and he was going to restore American balance. Now, we have mentioned earlier that there was this Trump RFK potential thing. RFK put it to sleep, right? We haven't pulled too much on that thread, but what did RFK say the other day? He said, RFK Jr. speaks on securing the border, but the juicy part, this is from War Clandestine, but the juicy part is that he's no longer denying the possibility of joining another ticket as VP. He now phrases it as, there's no plan B. I hope RFK will consider it when the DNC screw him over in the primary. So here again, now I'm not suggesting he goes with Trump, although it could happen. But the idea that we are going to get this third-party candidacy, something that I was testing around with everyone in Miami, is, what do you think is a third-party candidacy? People who would normally scrutinize, some crazy arguments that I come up with, everyone's saying this is the only time it's possible. Now, remember what we said before, that the last time a third-party candidate really challenged to win was in the creation of the bank cartel in 1912 to 1913, 14, when it was finally went live. But the whole 1912 election, the entire 1912 election, was focused on creating the bank cartel or not. So the Federal Reserve, everything was about that. Teddy Roosevelt was running for independent because he had come from the Republican system, the Republican Party. He was president until 1908. He chose his own successor, William Howard Taft. Taft promised not to create the bank cartel, backstabbed President Roosevelt, created the bank cartel. Roosevelt, who had been in Africa hunting for the Smithsonian. So a lot of the things you actually see in the Smithsonian and the Natural History Museum came from that trip that Teddy Roosevelt took. A lot of the specimens, right? He brought back a ship filled with specimens. And he returned home to run in this election for that simple purpose and was greeted as a hero when he returned. He created a new third party called the Bull Moose Party in order to compete against the Democrats and the Republicans, and he almost won. He wiped out Taft. Taft was not even a consideration, but it created a situation where the Democrat Party, Woodrow Wilson, came up the middle and won with very few votes. So what I've been saying from the very start about this particular election is that, just like the simulation suggests, right, the last time an independent party and the last time a third party came so close and affected the election to this extent was Teddy Roosevelt around the creation of the Federal Reserve. I think that the 2024 election, and I've been saying this here with you guys for many, many mornings now, that Bitcoin is going to be the most important subject, the centerpiece of debate around the 2024 presidential election in the US. And now I am happy to say that I am not the only person predicting that. We have Balaji Srinivasan himself, who is saying the same thing. And what did Balaji say? Balaji wrote this weekend, if 2016 was the first Twitter election, 2024 may be the first Bitcoin election. And he writes that in 2012, Facebook was a factor in Obama's election, but social media was still dismissed by many as a fad in a bubble. It didn't take center stage. But Twitter was what the 2016 election was truly about, because Twitter led to not just Trump, but Brexit, Bolsonaro, and all kinds of other left and right populists around the world. It allowed non-mainstream voices without any corporate media support to be heard for good or ill. After 2016, the establishment suddenly took Twitter seriously and began a massive campaign to censor and throttle it, one that was reversed by Elon's purchase in 2022, though we still need decentralized media to prevent a recurrence. Now, in 2023, we are on the verge of U.S. sovereign debt and default fiat crisis. If you think partisan animosity is hot now, what if the everything bubble pops well before the election? There are a variety of scenarios where a new Executive Order 6102 or equivalent attempt at asset seizure becomes a primary political issue. And then Bitcoin, once dismissed as a fad and bubble, may become what 2024 is all about. The right to hold Bitcoin shall not be infringed. And we heard that from RFK at the Bitcoin 2023 event. You're already starting to hear people say that. This is already entering common popular debate. And we made that prediction several months ago, and I think we're right on schedule. I think the Bill Pizzagate's revelations today help bring us one step forward. I think there's going to be way more, right? There's going to be way more. It's going to continue to lessen the credibility of these folks. And now put their credibility into the following context, right? Look at this whole Russia-Ukraine thing, right? Bakhmut. Bakhmut. We haven't heard about this fucking term. Bakhmut, right? Now, I'm sorry for all the terribleness that's happened there. I don't want to laugh about Bakhmut, right? It sounds awful, right? But what happened is Russia has now won Bakhmut. And you get all kinds of people saying, actually, Bakhmut was not a big deal. Ukrainian people saying, we don't really, it's just a little town. Like I'm saying right now, a little town. Who cares about Bakhmut? Well, it turns out that this is exactly where you get this kind of lack of credibility. Here's a breakdown of what, so people today saying, I'll work up to it, right? I'll work up to it. So this is Bakhmut, according to everybody who's so important and so significant and so relevant to the Biden administration, talking about Bakhmut in October 2022. The significance of the city cannot be overstressed. Bakhmut lies at the fork that points towards two other strategic towns. Blah, 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 right? So remember, this is October 20th, 2022. The significance of the city cannot be overstated. Let's move to March 2nd, 2023. Here we are again. This is from CNN. While Bakhmut's strategic importance should not be overstated, right? So that's where we're getting there. And now let's go to March 26th, just a few days later, right? Just a few days later. Since last summer, the city has been a stone's throw from the front lines, so its capture would represent a long sought-after success for Moscow's forces and bring some limited strategic value. So now it's limited, right? So now it's limited. But now here we are on May 20th, 2023. If confirmed, Russia's Bakhmut's capture would mark the country's first gain in months, but the city's symbolism always outweighed. It always outweighed its strategic importance, guys. Come on, that wasn't a big deal, right? Kaneko the Great picks up on that thread, and he says, 4 months ago, Vladimir Zelensky, or whatever, how you pronounce his name, requested billions in additional U.S. taxpayer-funded weaponry to defend Bakhmut and escalate the war against nuclear-armed Russia. The fight for Bakhmut will change the trajectory of our war for independence and for freedom, is what he said. And now he's just not really caring anymore. He says it doesn't matter. So lots of people picking up on this, folks. A lot of people picking up on this shift. I'd say the best breakdown of that shift is from David Sachs. So this is what he says. This week, while Bakhmut fell and I don't know, Zaluzny was already a casualty, retired general and CNN commentator Mark Hertling explained to the Washington Post how Zaluzny and his forces will eventually liberate most, if not all, of the land occupied by the Russians. The neocon press is clueless. So here's what David Sachs says about the significance. What is the significance of Bakhmut? Here's what the MSM should be telling you. 1. Regional transport and logistics hub. Bakhmut gives Russia access to key roads and rail. It places larger cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk within easy range of Russian artillery. Hence Zelensky's earlier comment that the loss of Bakhmut would give the Russians an open road to the rest of Donetsk. This is number 2, unique defensive fortifications. Bakhmut's network of subterranean salt mines and tunnels, 100 plus miles, contributed to its defensibility. It also provides an underground complex to stockpile weapons, munitions, and equipment. Ukraine has other lines of defense, but Bakhmut may have been unique. 3, Fortress Bakhmut. Bakhmut became a rallying cry for Ukrainian resistance. Zelensky called it the fortress of our morale and gave a Bakhmut flag to the U.S. Congress. The fight for Bakhmut will change the trajectory of our war for independence and freedom, he said. Number 4, Operation Meat Grinder. Russia may have used Bakhmut as a trap to lure in Ukrainians' top troops and generals, causing them massive casualties and imperiling the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Prigozhin videos claim the Russians were running out of ammo, which were eagerly reported by MSM, and that may have been part of the trap, right? So we're getting a lot of pretty interesting information around this stuff, and we'll see, right? It looks like the whole war piece is getting memory hold, and they're trying to make people forget that this was a major loss, right? And I think it just adds to this whole confusion around who do you trust, where do you get your information from, and I think it's going to lead to more people. Now, I understand Bitcoiners don't fall for this. It's not like Bitcoiners were sitting around saying, "What's happening in Bakhmut?" Right? I think we're sad about what's happening, but we're not wondering. We're not sitting there saying, "Oh gosh, what if only we'll know what happens in Bakhmut." So I think what you're going to get is even more incredulity and people peeling out of the system because you have a new gap, right? There's more air. There's people that can see the way out and the light at the end of the dark veil put over folks' eyes. And I think it's going to even continue. So remember I mentioned that people going to the news, and now you're going to get more and more deep fakes like that Joe Biden Bud Light commercial, which is amazing, right? But there's more to it, right? There's more to it. The entire edifice of mainstream media and Hollywood, for example. Look at what's going on in Hollywood right now. You've got the writer's strike, the actors are about to go on strike, and you've got the directors going on strike. So these three at once are about to go on strike. And do you know why? Everyone knows why now. It's AI, right? They don't like what's happening with AI. They think they're going to be out of a job, and they think they can actually get their unions to renegotiate innovation, and that this stuff's going to go away. But it looks like everyone is starting to take notice. It looks like a lot of actors are actually excited to get onto the picket lines with the writers. And it looks like people think that people are waiting for their Hollywood stuff to come out. Now, this is going to have a much bigger effect than most people realize because it comes on the heels of Disney itself, the largest US movie studio, production studio in the world, having probably the worst week in its history. So what happened to Disney this week is they've had to pull shows off of their streaming service because, and that is Willow, because they didn't want to pay residuals to writers during the writer's strike. And no one watches it anyway, so it's no big deal. They're having box office trouble. All movies have been halted because of what's going on, those that still require writers. But one of the more interesting takes on it came from Johnny Depp. So Johnny Depp, of course, got put through the same ringer that we've seen a lot of people get put through with his ex-wife, Amber Heard. And he had let's say he was kicked out of Hollywood for a little while, and people were asking him. So he ended up going to Cannes Film Festival, which is happening now, and he had a major success. Apparently, he got a 7-minute standing ovation. 7 minutes longer than the Indiana Jones Disney movie that was also released at Cannes, right? People left early. People were heard talking in the theater because it was so boring. It's one of the most expensive movies Disney's ever made, and I can't see it making any money back. Apparently, it's filled with cliche, mainstream media talking points. There's all kinds of gender comments and all kinds of reframing of the entire legacy of Indiana Jones. So Indiana Jones, right, starring some 80-year-old guy. They need to, basically, with the amount of money they spent on it, they need to make like $1 billion for the movie to make any money, because it's one of the most expensive movies ever made. I don't see it happening, right? If you can't even get an audience at Cannes Film Festival in France to sit through the movie and not talk and laugh, right? It's apparently getting the same reactions that the Star Wars movie Rise of Skywalker got, which is open laughter in the theater about what people were seeing. Like when I went and watched, and here's how you know how terrible it is. Any other Star Wars movie that George Lucas produced, not any of the Disney films, they're in my case all the same, right? I went and saw them one time. That's it, one time. I would go to the theater and go like, that was terrible. The other ones in my life, right, the whole prequel trilogy, I probably went to the theater 10 times a movie, maybe more. And I couldn't stop thinking about them, whether or not, I understand why people didn't like them. There was things I didn't like about them, but nevertheless, you were in this world, you were getting information that was revelatory, right? I loved every minute of those movies when I would see them in the theater, despite some of the off-tune, off-key stuff that was in there, like everyone has expressed many times before, right? Don't need to go over the problems with the Disney prequel trilogy, but I'll tell you, to this day, I love it. I loved them all when they came out. I defended them all when they came out. I was happy to see them admitting their warts. Didn't have a problem with that. But what's going on now is that I openly laughing when Palpatine came back in Rise of Skywalker, for example. Somehow Palpatine has come back, right? That's how they brought it in. And so the bloom is off the rose. I can't imagine anyone, like, I'm not going to get suckered into giving any of my money to go see stupid Indiana Jones, this one. So it's a major problem, right? And so Johnny Depp was asked about it, Hollywood and all this stuff in this context, right? Are you want to come back? They asked him, and he said, that makes it sound like I'm going to like tap dance with my old favorite dancer, and we're, it's ridiculous. But what he did say is, I don't feel boycotted by Hollywood because I don't think about Hollywood. And he says the world doesn't need Hollywood. And indeed, with the amount of production quality we have now with AI, with remember what I've been saying about all of these, the sampling. Now you're starting to really see it, right? Taking old movies, redoing them with a different frame or style. These Star Wars movies that people are doing with like Wes Anderson now, like Wes Anderson does Star Wars movies, right? Now these are just for fun, but soon, and I don't think you're necessarily going to put a new frame on these movies. I think you're going to actually get real fan fiction that people can produce at scale and with quality. And that's going to be the future. A lot of the things that come off of copyright, even if they're on copyright, my whole law school thesis was exactly on that. It was that copyright came in with the printing press, and I argued in 2008 it was going to go out with the printing press. Now, it doesn't mean overnight, but look at what happened in music with sampling. That's where these things are headed. We're going to be sampling movies and turning them into something completely new. And that's the future. It's not these huge studios. It's not, what the budget of Indiana Jones was? Imagine spending 3, 4, we don't really know. The original budget was 200 and something million. And then there was all kinds of reshoots, which are super expensive, marketing, all that. It looks like the budget's going to be maybe $400 million, $500 million for a movie that no one's going to watch. Now, how can that ever compete against AI? What would it cost us to create a movie, a good one, using AI and a retread of these things? Probably a lot less. But that wasn't the best part. The best part from the Johnny Depp interview is the following. And this is, I think, what's most important for political alignment, for breaking more people out of the system that seems to be training them to be stupid. Here's what he says. And this was, now remember, he's coming off of a 7-minute standing ovation, and he has to deal with these low IQ journalists, right? And it was the perfect blend of him being back full of confidence and dealing with morons. And, it comes off with a certain amount of humor and wit, and it all shone through. So here's what he said. It's a very strange and funny time where everybody would love to be themselves but can't, because they must fall in line with the person in front of them. You want to live that kind of life? I wish you the best. I'll be on the other side somewhere. It's deadly. This is deadly stuff. Deadly stuff for Hollywood, for the mainstream media. This is Johnny Depp saying things like that and starting to get people to talk like that is as significant as creating a new communications platform that has cool people on it, that is saying things that gets people interested and is taking away mind share and attention. This is going to lead to more people saying these kinds of things. And I don't think Hollywood can survive this, right? I think we're seeing the last days of Hollywood with the strike. Because do we want it to come back? Are we like clamoring for late night comedy shows to come back? Who watches? I'm probably the only one who's going to die for this stuff and want it to come back, simply because I'm losing Moscow time content. And that is a problem for me. But I'll live with no Moscow time content if it means not having to deal with these brainwashers. So that's the good news. Now, if you put that into the context of the other big issue that everyone's talking about right now, which is the debt ceiling, right? The debt ceiling. So now all kinds of people saying, we're going to go bankrupt. America's finished. If we can't get this stuff done, we're going to be in big, big trouble. If we don't have the debt ceiling increased, America won't pay its bills and we're going to be finished. So Janet Yellen now also saying that there's going to be more, they're calling them bank CEOs that are going to agree to more mergers, right? So it's going to be mergers. That's the thing. Whereas other people are saying that means bank failures. They're not mergers. It's not mergers, right? They're failures. They're banks failing and other banks having to pick up and wipe their ass. It's not a merger. These are failures. Now, add the bank failure thing to this debt ceiling argument. And here's what the White House says. If the U.S. defaults, the stock market is expected to decline by 45%. Now, go into the comments of any one of the papers coming with that quote, right? 45%. Every one of them is the same on Twitter. Let it burn is what they say, right? The let it burn quote tweets and comments tell you everything you need to know. Everyone is comfortably numb to the consequences of what this is. So here you go. We're in a world where the debt ceiling debate is now not going to be managed and controlled the way it was and would have been in a previous time, because the mainstream media credibility is at an all-time low. You've got tech and things like deepfake coming in to further dilute its effectiveness, because you can't really trust anything, right? And you've also got the main brainwashing entity of America, the Disney films, pretty much as powerful as all of the mainstream news media, simply because it reaches into so many young people, it reaches so many families, it reaches so many Americans. But how many people still watch this stuff, right? It's going down and down and down. And now we're not going to get any Wall Street stuff, our Hollywood stuff, for the next few months. And I don't think that's going to stop, right? I don't think that anyone out there who believes that technology is going to create the next frontier of art and creation and all of these things is going to be much concerned about what's going on with the writer's strike. And nor am I. We're almost at 1,000 subs. It'll happen any day, but I'm obviously proceeding with Satoshi Wedding Murder production stuff. So I think embedded in my idea around Satoshi Wedding Murders is also the actual idea on how art is going to get created in the future. It really is all about sharing royalties with viewers, listeners, community, right? And at the heart of my story is a little mousetrap that I created to help get you guys some money, right? So I definitely want to help you guys get success through being an early fan here on the Breakup. And the book comes with a royalty sharing mechanism that I think will help everyone be successful. So that's what Bitcoiners have to do, of course. We got to be able to share our success around. We have a history of doing it. It's not going to be the old bullshit model. It's going to help people with good taste make money off their taste. I predict in the future, right? In the future, you're going to see things like this. Yo, you know how rich that guy is? That person was at the first concert of X. Do you know they have an original edition book from Y? Can you believe it? Do you know they were there at that time, right? So you're going to be rewarded for having great taste. I mean, that's literally the future, right? So there you go. That's what I got for today. Let's see what people say in the comments, right? So we got simulation theory today. We got some stories on the debt ceiling. We've got some stuff on Bakhmut and on Disney and Hollywood. So let's see what people have to say. Pizza the Hut. We love Pizza the Hut. Pizza the Hut was great. Bitcoin Graffiti. That was a great character. We got Justin saying he will not eat the seed oils. He's promising us to not eat the seed oils. I bet you had a little in Miami there, Justin. They got us all. We all got seed oil down there a little bit. Good morning, Bitcoin. Nice crowd. Nice to be here. Hey, Boo Boo Audacious. Yeah, we love it when you're here, man. Morning, plebs. Morning. Yes, but Pete have a brain. He has a brain. I mean, I think Pete Buttigieg is a smart guy. We can't deny him that, right? He's just poorly applied. Satoshi's razor, the most painful to accept model, tends to be the right one. Oh no, Bitcoin Graffiti. Let's not go with that. Forget seed oils. I'm just trying to eliminate sugar. You think there's the interest in a documentary entitled The White Devil? Yeah, I think look at some of that old colonial history of sugar, and I think you'll have a lot of stuff there. I simply can't. I mean, I eat chocolate ice cream every night, guys. I'll tell you the truth. I do it. Don't even want to stop. But I eat really nice, clean, pure Quebec dairy, delicious chocolate ice cream. I seek out the best ice cream everywhere I go, the lowest sugar, and then I mix it with peanut butter, straight peanut butter, because if you mix with fat and proteins, it's not so much the sugar that I worry about, it's the insulin spike. And when my wife was pregnant, she always gets gestational diabetes. Some women get that when they get pregnant. They have a form of diabetes. All it is optimizing for the growth of the baby, actually. So you lose insulin resistance in order to put the weight on the baby. It's not the mother who gains the weight, it's the baby who gains the weight. So I had both of my children were born premature by a month, but 9 pounds. So enormous, right? That's what happens with, it's like an evolutionary optimization, but it's not good for the wife. But anyway, through her dietitian, when she had these things, she learned about mixing fat and protein with sugars in order to reduce the insulin spike that comes, which is really what you're after. It's not the sugar so much, but I'm not an expert. So I understand why some people would want to eliminate sugar and all those things. That's what I do. I mix chocolate ice cream with delicious, no sugar, obviously no seed oil, peanut butter, and you get like the best dessert ever. And it's not so bad. Brian, congratulating me for good work on the panels in Miami. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Ollie with a woohoo RFK debate. RFK baby. Yeah, we love him, huh? What about the Ross Perot campaign? Yeah, so Boo Boo, he came in third. He had a big effect on it, but he didn't come in second, and he didn't get a lot of votes. What he did do was cut Republican votes down so that Bill Clinton could run up the middle. So he had a big effect. I'm not going to say no effect, but he wasn't going to win, right? Teddy Roosevelt in 1912 could have won. It was very close. It was actually the Republicans that sucked his votes away that kept him from winning. So it was a reverse. And so what I'm saying is, just like in 1912, 2024 is going to be a very similar situation, except at no other time in history do people want to punish both parties at the same time, right? There's enough appetite. I'd say 40% of Republicans, even MAGA folks, are ready to be done with Trump, even though we love him, right? Even though we love him. And I've been in that category, as I've mentioned many times. I'm not defending the guy. I'm not doing it for another 4 years. I can't. It's too stressful, right? I don't care to do it either. So I just don't want to add that to my life anymore. So there you go. If you were right about Bitcoin being 2024 center point, I'm going to be amazed. What do you think the American public is going to think of Bitcoin? Are they going to understand it as a network? I think they're going to understand the basics of separating money and state. I think that's the most important story, and that's the easiest one to understand. I don't think we're ever going to be able to explain. I mean, luckily, Bitcoin as a network is less complex than the ridiculous Federal Reserve system and fractional reserve banking mixed with the commercial entities that do it, because you don't understand, it's very complicated to understand where maturity transformation fits in, and where all the treasury management and the risk management around the world fits in, especially to the inflation of the size. I don't mean the inflation of the value of the money, the inflation of the size of the Forex market, which is really one of the main problems we have. I mean, the amount of money sloshing around in Forex is larger than the equities market. It's larger than all the value produced in the world. And all it is people managing treasury and doing risk management. An important skill, an important quality, an important thing in any company. But it certainly shouldn't dictate the massive amount of money supply in the world. And that's what happened, right? So I think they're going to get that part. Which is the most important part for the average Americans. Clairvoyant? No, the system is not. It's not a clairvoyance. It's simply applying predictive principles. If something's predictive, it's useful, right? And the Elon's razor of the most entertaining outcome is simply the most predictive. It works. Yeah, I think Perot is how we got Clinton, is how we got NAFTA, is how we got welfare reform. No, NAFTA came before. NAFTA was before. NAFTA was the Canadians being too clever for American politicians. Not too clever is the wrong word. Canadians needed it so much more than Americans, and America in those years, the early 90s, it's like when you're up, you're up by 10 points in a game, right? Yeah, okay, take one. And that's truly the history of NAFTA. Reagan and Bush were not that concerned, and so at first it was the Canada-U.S. free trade. It was actually the 88 election that brought that in. NAFTA, the Mexico component of it, bringing Mexico in, that indeed was Clinton, but Canada was already picking American pockets before. So it's not not to I understand that Clinton and NAFTA had a role, but it was Canadians. That sequel trilogy sucks so bad I didn't care to watch it. It looked bad from the get-go. Yeah, Bitcoin Graffiti, you saved yourself some time. It was indeed the worst. It was a total reshuffling of political parties and donor bases. Yeah, that's true. The Moscow Times is not going away yet. There's other sources there. There's other sources, as P. Man Van is saying. Believe me, you will not run out of the Moscow Times. Hey, look at this. This is someone I met at Modern Distressed Investing. I met him, great guy, Thomas Brazil. I had dinner with him my first night in Miami, as well as spent quite a bit of time with him. Great family and a lot of fun. How was the talk with RFK? Give us the scoops. Yeah, I mean, that's what it was. I was coming out of, we were on a boat, and the boat it was just docked. It wasn't out sailing. And it started to rain, so we got pushed in under the canopy. I didn't want to wait in line to meet him or anything like that, but we were got pushed in. We just happened to merge together, and CK was in front. He was taking pictures of us, and we were chatting. We got a nice chat in, and it was literally about. I'm not kidding. I was talking about Elon's razor and most entertaining outcome being the answer. But he got it right away. I said it goes back to 64, and I've been predicting since November you're going to win. You're going to be at least a major factor in the presidential election, and here you are. So there you go. The conference of Bitcoin Graffiti was absolutely great. Bitcoin Graffiti, I loved it. I had a great time. AI convo with Drew. Isn't Drew smart? Isn't that good? Yeah, I had never. He had told me about his frame. We had 2 planning calls, and he created some notes, but it was absolutely excellent. I want to hear more about your Satoshi sharing plan. My wife has a. I think a book she wants to market that way. Yeah, no problem. So my whole point here, Brian, is to model it for other people to copy. So that's it, right? So, and even if in case someone's worried about it being shitcoinery or whatever, the actual thing attached to the book is only attached to the intellectual property. It's not like a network for people to do this and a platform. It's none of that, right? It's none of that. You just take your sales, put it in Bitcoin as an AMM, and whatever percentage of future royalties the person owns, they just withdraw when they feel like. It's basically like I'm buying back the equity in the story through the royalty sharing, if you want that, right? So you can keep it there forever until there's enough to draw out, or you can take it right away when you want to get the money out. So there you go. Stopping cigarettes is much easier than stopping sugar. Yeah, haven't won that fight yet. Yeah, I don't even try. The operating system is addiction, by the way, guys. We don't have a choice. Got to get addicted to something. Keto is great. Peanut butter is poison. Yeah, not good for you. Slow kill. Yeah, I've heard that. I agree. I mean, I don't know what to say. I have weaknesses and failures, like everyone, between the Ross Perot and Roosevelt. Yeah, I hope it made sense. Ross Perot came in third, right? And I think he only got he did well, 17%, if I'm just remembering off the top of my head. But there you go. Akeem made it from Las Vegas. Thanks, Akeem. It's earlier where you are. You're up early. Good stuff. Good point. Bitcoin. Yeah. So I think that's what's going to be clear. And I think that's a top line story that that if we get that through, separate money and state in the 2024 election, that's going to be the rallying story around it, right? There you go. Can't wait for the book, Nolan. Thanks, man. Love the idea of royalty sharing model. Things are turning for the best. I see it happening. The more clown world goes off the deep end. Yeah, well, I think it's happening quick. I think we're doing it. Right? I think we're there. Justin Trudeau comment after RFC. In case you guys didn't see it, after the RFK speech, I just happened to be, luckily, was the main host of the news desk, so it came right to me. So I thanked Justin Trudeau, but I said, if he does go down, and by the way, here's one of my greatest predictions ever, unbeatable, right? So as far as I can tell. So in 2014, 2015, when Trudeau was starting to run, I was working still in the Senate in Canada for Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister at the time, working on the Bitcoin study. Totally had quit mentally politics. I was there because of the Bitcoin study. I was a full-time Bitcoin brain person by then. But I could tell what was happening. I could tell Trudeau was going to win. It was just obvious, right? Now there were many reasons why, but it looked possible. So even in the election, I said, yeah, Trudeau's probably going to win. But he will go down in history as the biggest loser, not just in politics. He will be the punchline to end all politics of that form, all of that sappy liberal. And it's not the liberal part. I don't have a problem with liberals in the pure sense, of course, right? So I don't mean to misuse the word liberal like that, but it's the sappy, I'm a better person than you, I've got heart, you don't, you're callous, I'm good, you have the politics of division, I don't. Like that whole scam, right? I said he's going to be such a punchline, he'll end it all. He's going to be the reason why the whole thing falls down. And so I made that prediction in 2014, and I think I'm right. I think he will actually be the punchline for why these systems go to shit. And so that's what I said. I said basically he'll go down. It looks like my prediction is on schedule, but he'll go down as the biggest idiot in the history of politics or to run a country. But here was the one that sneaked past the censors, right? So you can't actually say kill yourself on like a broadcast, but you can suggest someone gets and applies for MAID. So I said the good news is he's not going to have to live with the embarrassment because he lives in Canada. He can just apply to get MAID, and I hope he does. That's not true. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. You don't want anyone to lose faith, even Justin Trudeau. But there you go. But well, anyway, I won't go further than that. So Bitcoin Graffiti, Drew will be extra smart once we leave this hash horizon. Yeah, I mean, Drew is pretty amazing guy. Weinstein always lights up my neurons anew. Yeah, you know, Boo Boo, so I got to sit with him at dinner the other night, and I go way back with Eric Weinstein, actually. I got him into the scene. I called him in 2019 and interviewed him in New York City about Bitcoin. He was a keynote speaker at an event I produced for CoinDesk. He was the final talk. I called it, what was the title? Magic Internet Money or the Panopticon or something like that. And it was awesome. It was awesome. And then him and I always joke now that because this was on Broadway that we did it, that we closed down Broadway. We were like the last show of significance on Broadway because, of course, COVID hit right after. And that was the end of Broadway shows for several years. So since then, I've kept in touch with Eric Weinstein. We had a few reasons to text over the years. And I keep seeing him at events now. And so I saw him, it was a very fancy party that I met him at where I had dinner with him. That all that stuff with RFK and Eric, that was all at Saylor's house, right? So some people, because I'm with Bitcoin Magazine, was lucky enough to get an invite to the house, and so we were all there, and I, sat next to Eric and had a great time and hung out with him quite a bit. And indeed, he's a lot of fun to talk to, and I think he's just the best. Right? Glad he's on our team. Glenn, after we separate money and state, the state dissolves. Oh, I think you'll still have some. I think you'll have something. But yeah, the state at least has a accountability, right? The state has accountability. The reason I say, I won't deny the excellent state education that I had. I won't deny it. And I won't deny that here's the problem. Even going to like charter schools, here's an argument I've made about education for a long time. So just follow the money, right? So today, the problem with the public system is the clients are the government, right? So they're just trying to make the government happy to give them money, right? The public school system. So that's what sucks. It's not that it is a public school system in particular that's the problem. It's that the client is the state because they're the money. Follow the money. The money is the person spending, the client is the person spending the money, right? So in this case, we've made the state the client. Charter is actually a step up because it engages the parent as the client, right? The parent is now spending the money. But we, as Bitcoiners, we simply we cannot deny the people who don't have a good family. What are we supposed to do? Like, oh, sorry, you didn't have a good family to be the client in an education scheme. That's awful, right? We can't do that, especially as Bitcoiners. We have created the model for education. That's what I do. That's what my show is. It's when I program a show, I'm simply taking up the slack that the university system has provided because there's a vacuum there. They can't handle this content. It's too fast. It moves too quickly. That's why the conferences are so important. They're a university experience condensed into 4 days and instead of 4 years. So that's why it's so popular. So the P2P model that Bitcoin meetups have instituted around the world through modeling how we should all read is actually the most successful literacy scheme, financial literacy scheme that the world has ever seen. So eventually we will get to a point where the kids are the actual clients again. And I don't think there's necessarily money involved, but it's their time, and where a kid decides to spend their time because it's so useful, fun, invigorating, inspirational, educational. That's where we have to actually focus. So it's a step process, though. I'm not trying to stop the education system from evolving this way. And Boo Boo says he loved the conf on education was safe, and Corey DeAngelis. Yeah, that's why we were talking about it that way. Corey is sort of this middle ground where he's trying to re-engage parents as the clients, which is great. But there's one step further, which is what Safe was talking about, right? Which is this Bitcoin P2P model, Bitcoin meetups being the ultimate education vehicle, and scaling that Bitcoin meetup culture to every park, every public space in the world, so that no kid has to go without a great education because they just have to spend time somewhere, right? That's how we have to alter the education system. We're on our way. That's after the Bitcoin standard, though. That's after. Let's see. First thing I heard from... I got someone asking my thoughts on the hardware wallet debacle. Honestly, I'm a little out of touch, guys. I mean, that to be totally truthful, it wasn't just the technical things that I couldn't get to doing the breakup each morning in Miami, although it was enough of a problem that it could have killed the whole thing itself. I don't know what's going on in the world. You're in a bubble in these events. No clue what's happening, right? I have no time. My system to make the show is, as I scroll through stories in the day, I just take screenshots. And when I wake up in the morning, I sort of have an inventory of stories that I thought were interesting, and I write them down, and a theme either pops out. I have a way of, adding it all together. I exclude some stuff. I look for new stuff if I need to. But that's how I produce it. So if I'm not even scrolling in the day, that's another thing I have to add to my schedule in the morning. Like, I've got to learn about what happened the day before. Now I can do that too. I know who to look for and all these things, right? I know some people who are also good news aggregators, and I have a collection of them. Sticks, Hex, and Hammer, for example, right? Great news aggregator. So I take those and then produce the show out of it. So I couldn't even tell you what was going on in the world. Literally couldn't. It's just too busy, right? I've got stuff to field in the morning, this speaker, that speaker, have to do a lot of the management and all that. So that's why we weren't there. So the hardware wallet thing, I heard people chatting about it. I don't care. I just didn't listen to it. I don't know the story yet. I'll find out, though. I am interested. I shouldn't say I don't care. I haven't cared until now, but now I have the time to look into it. Sounds pretty bad. Sounds like Ledger massively effed up. But that's, as much as me so far. I haven't developed an interesting thought. Eric, Satoshi invented digital scarcity. Yeah, that's what we talked about exactly in 2019, him and I, and he remains correct. On the Bitcoin side, the nation state will be about as significant as homeowners association is today. Yeah, that's what I think. That's where we're headed. Oh, I already did that one. CK's in the house. Good morning, CK. Hope you're doing well. Education is so cheap now. It's just the mainstream still only accepts the legacies. Yeah, it is so cheap. Like, people were asking me about my homeschool criteria or curriculum with the kids. Like, it's time, right? I spend time helping them read and all that. But we play a lot of apps, right? Apps that are about pattern recognition, math, all those kinds of things. And what do I pay for those? $15 a month or something for like several that are good, really good, right? Fun games that kids like to play on their iPads. So there you go. All right, team. That's what I got for today. Peace.